As I'm writing this, we have finally received the cavalcade of Owl House information that we have been wanting for quite a long time. I am glad my fears that we would not get practically any new information about the show this calendar year have been disproven. I'm sure all of you know what I'm about to say by now, but in case you don't, Season 2 of The Owl House will premiere on June the 12th, and we will get one episode per week until August. Thus, we are getting 10 episodes in Season 2A. When the show resumes, whenever that is, we will get 11 episodes in Season 2B, bringing the total number of episodes in this show up to 40. Season 3 will unfortunately be much shorter. It will be only 3 hour-long episodes for reasons I don't really know, and reasons that are completely outside the control of showrunner Dana Terrace. So that is a little unfortunate that she will not get to wrap up the show in the way that she intended, but at least she is getting the chance to wrap it up. Above all things, absolutely enjoy Season 2 when it premieres. And for now, let's theorize about it. Let's talk about what's going to happen when the show finally does premiere its second season. First off, Lumity. It probably is going to happen. Dana Terrace has said that the show is not going to suddenly become romance-centric, but that she has been encouraged by the response Lumity received in Season 1, and that she is going to incorporate more romance subplots into Season 2, which is good. I get the impression that Ms. Terrace is never the most comfortable with these romantic subplots for the same reason that she doesn't really like musicals. It's not really her thing, which is fine. I mean, I like romance and musicals, but Ms. Terrace definitely looks more focused on the whimsical and the macabre, as she puts it in her Twitter profile. I'm sure Terrace is absolutely thrilled by the response Lumity has gotten, considering how she had to fight Disney to make this happen. Anyway, I've already outlined in multiple videos how I think this pairing should happen and why I think it's a good idea. But just to go back over a lot of those points, I think that it should absolutely be tied into Amity's growth as a person, especially considering how deeply her growth as a person is tied into her relationship with Luce. Amity is not a bad person at all, not even in the Zuko way, where she's misguided and guilty of internalizing the ideals of her society. She's not even guilty in a Sasha way, where she's actually mostly a good person, but has a lot of flaws that she needs to work out. Amity is just a perfectly decent person who has nonetheless suffered under the rules and regulations of her family. A wealthy and successful family that does not want Amity to associate with anyone outside the circle her family specifies. Luce is goofy and weird, and honestly, I don't know what's going inside her head half the time, but Luce is good for Amity. The two of them contrast in a way that I think is beneficial for both of them. Luce can kind of learn from Amity, both about magic and about this world, but the relationship is even better for Amity because she can take from Luce this stroke of wildness and reckless abandon and energy and the willingness to defy the rules. All of those are good things to have, perhaps not in as large a quantity as Luce has of them, but it is good to have at least a little bit of that in you, especially for someone like Amity, who has had all of that beaten out of her by her very restrictive parents. Considering how green hair in our world is typically associated with rebellion and breaking free and nonconformity, it's really interesting how in this world it's like the exact opposite, and Amity's green hair is very much a result of her parents' manipulation. They forced her to dye her hair green so she fits in with her mother, who definitely seems like the more controlling of her two parents. Odelia Blight refuses to entertain the possibility of her daughter differing from her in any significant way. Considering that Amity is just scared, she's lonely. And the eternally confident Luce is the perfect elixir for that. If Luce, this human from another world, can barge into this magical world and make a life for herself and do well for herself, why wouldn't Amity be able to do the same, considering how Amity has had so many more advantages in life? Amity very much sees Luce as an inspiration, as a model of the kind of person she could be more like, and she perhaps should be more like. Even though she is initially dismissive of Luce, we see that she is actually kind of envious of Luce, considering Luce's freedom and her spontaneity. It's something that Amity wants to emulate, and I think that as the show has progressed, she has started to do that in a lot of really interesting ways. Now, one of the most obvious and clear-cut ways she can define herself is by finally revealing her feelings for Luce. Luce is not an idiot or a fool, despite how some fan art has betrayed her, but she is kind of dense, and she is kind of oblivious about romantic relationships. She is absolutely the kind of person who loves to be involved in shipping and all these fandom romantic discussions. If she were in our world, and if she were a viewer of this show, she would absolutely be cheering for Lumity to happen. But of course, since she's in this world, and she's very much in this situation, instead of an observer of it, she cannot really detect Amity's feelings. She takes it as nothing more than friendship. But if Amity is upfront with Luce, despite being terrified of Luce rejecting her, and just admits the truth, I honestly think Luce would reciprocate. We certainly haven't gotten any indication that Luce doesn't feel that way toward Amity. For Amity, this is in her mind a high-risk, high-reward approach. It's a big risk because if Luce does reject her, then she's kind of destroyed that friendship in a lot of ways, or at least that's what she fears. Luce is one of her very few true friends. One of the few people who's actually there for her. One of the few people she can confide in. One of the few people she can say anything to and not be afraid of receiving a lot of blowback. Luce is there for her, and Amity likes that, and Amity doesn't want to lose that. But if Amity does reveal her feelings toward Luce, and they are reciprocated, this would be a triumph for her. Not just because she gets to be in that romantic bond with someone she really cares about in that way, but also because she's demonstrated that she has learned from Luce in a lot of ways, and she has become a little more spontaneous and a little more passionate, a little more willing to do what it takes to get what she really wants instead of always being so afraid of what others think of her. It would demonstrate her definitively forming an identity for herself. And that is really important. With that aside, I'd also like to know a little more about Emperor Belos. He is an intriguing figure, and I would like to know more about him. I'd like the show to really delve into not just his backstory, but his motivations and what he's actually getting out of this and how he views the world. As much as I love Amphibia, And I don't have any problem with that show going with the over-the-top cartoony villain with Andreas. This show is teasing at things that are more interesting, and I'd like to see where they go with that. There have been a lot of theories floating around that Balos is secretly a human, and that he got transported to this world in a similar way to Luz. I don't know if that is true, but I kind of want it to be, or I want something similar like that to be true. I want Balos to kind of have conspicuously constructed this facade of grandeur and power to kind of hide whatever psychological stuff that I'm sure is going on there beneath the surface. I don't know what secrets he's hiding, but I would really like these secrets to be a lot more complicated than, oh, I'm secretly more evil than you know. There's nothing wrong with having a villain who is nothing but a Cthulhu-like manifestation of pure cosmic evil, but with Balos, I think they're doing something more personal, and I would love to see how they're going to tease that out in the future. And I think a major way they could progress in that is to draw on the parallels between him and Luz. The old tradition of having the villain say to the hero, oh, we're really not that different, may be cliché, but it's cliché for a reason. It works when done well. It can force the hero to see the villain as not this other, not this force completely outside their own pure heroic self, but as a sort of shadow, sort of projection of the other side of themselves that always has been there, but that they really don't want to admit. It could be that Balos is kind of a manifestation of the person Luz could have become had she not had the support of Ida and this wonderful network of friends and romantic interests, if you count Amity, that Luz has developed. This is especially true if Balos does, in fact, turn out to be a human. That would open up even more possibilities for these parallels. I'm not saying I don't want the show to make him a villain. I have no problem with him just being the antagonist the heroes have to defeat, but I want him to be perhaps a more nuanced and interesting antagonist than the show has presented thus far. It's definitely shown glimmers of developing him in that direction, so I want to see what they do with that. And my final point, which is kind of related to the Balos point, is that I want to know more about the Titan. Does Balos in fact have a connection with the Titan, as he claims? Does Luz have a connection with the Titan? Who knows? I would love to know more about this. I would love to know more about the history of the Titan. Since so much of Balos' story is unknown, and since he purports to have such a connection with the Titan, I think it would be a good idea, writing-wise, to have the revelations about the Titan be very much tied in with the revelations about Balos' character. Perhaps Luz could be placed into a situation similar to that which Balos was in when he first came to the Boiling Isles, if we stick to the theory that Balos is not in fact from here, which I do subscribe to. What does the Titan actually want? Will the Titan favor Luz? It's a possibility. I don't know, but there's a lot of really interesting things to consider, and I'm excited to see in what directions the show ends up going. So, I hope you're as excited as I am in terms of contemplating what will happen in the future of the show. It's shown a lot of potential, and I'm interested to see where it goes from here. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching The Owl House. It's a great show, and I'm really interested to see what they do with it in Season 2. It's fascinating and compelling and thoughtful. And I'm not saying it doesn't have flaws, it does, but I'm really interested to see how the show is going to take that next step in Season 2 as things get more serious and dramatic. I believe it will take that next step, just like we saw with Amphibia in its Season 2. So anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. I promise you that. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.